My name is Philip Boone, and my co-host is Dryke. Before we begin, I'd like to state that the views represented in this podcast are those of the individuals in this conversation and not the official position of Boston Avenue United Methodist Church.
So today's podcast is a little different than what we usually do. Today we don't have a guest. We just have a topic, perhaps for lively debate between Philip and I. This particular topic stemmed out of a conversation that I had with a college friend who I ran into a few months ago. And she was like, "Oh, you're at Boston Avenue Church. How great is that? Methodists are super interesting. I've always been really captivated by John Wesley's rules at the front of the hymnal." And I was like, "Rules in the hymnal?" And she's like, "Yeah, the rules for singing." And I was like, "What rules for singing?" And she goes, "Oh, go look them up. They're really interesting." So I went back to the office the next day, grabbed a hymnal, and sure enough, there are these rules at the front of the hymnal. And I now, for like ever, to every other Methodist that I meet, I'm like, "Did you know about the rules?" And so I did that with Philip, and Philip was like, "What rules?"
Yep, the rules for congregational singing were included in the 1761 publication Select Hymns with Tunes Annexed, a hymn book for early Methodists. Now hymns are considered traditional worship, but at the time they were really new and modern. And if you go ahead and get your hymnal that I'm sure you have at your house, wherever you are listening to this podcast, turn to page Roman numeral 7 at the very beginning. It is right there in the United Methodist Hymnal, The 7 Directions for Singing by John Wesley.
Now, if you do not have a hymnal in your household, shame on you, number one. 2, we will walk through all of these rules bit by bit and kind of explore them, debate them, talk about their relevancy today. So you should be able to get through all 7 of the rules just with us.
Excellent. We're going to start with number 1. Learn these tunes before you learn any others. Afterwards, learn as many as you please. So what are your thoughts about that one, Caitlin?
Well, I think that in the historical context, this rule makes a lot of sense. John Wesley definitely felt that there was a lot of theological value in hymns and in congregational singing. It kind of undergirds Methodist theology overall. There's that same theme of being in community together. Everybody does their part. So it makes a lot of sense historically, but in a modern context, I hate it.
I agree with the historical context, because especially before you had all the printed hymns, you'd have to, in order to learn it, you'd have to repeat it over and over and over. And it's interesting because I'm coming from a completely different mindset than Caitlin is. I love singing. That's my...
Hey, I like singing too. I just like singing Beyonce, Lizzo, etc.
There you go. And I do not. But I love singing hymns, and it's really where I get a lot of the spiritual aspect of worship for me is through music. So I am coming from that point of view, and Caitlin is coming from...
Yeah, I'm a little more secular, so obviously I feel pretty personally attacked by these rules because they're designed so people don't operate like I do, that they do know their hymns, that they engage spiritually with music before that they engage it in a secular environment.
And I feel that the hymnal is interesting because I feel if you ask the average person how many hymns they actually know, I think it would come out to more like 9 or 10 or 11 out of the whole hymnal. Because there are a lot of hymns that I've never heard before, because a lot of churches do the same certain amount of hymns that they don't know as many as you could possibly learn. But there's not much to go with that one. Just learn the tunes, and then learn more.
Well, and so something that's interesting with the context, and especially looking at the modern hymnal. So I'm drawing some research from an article by Martin V. Clark called John Wesley's Directions for Singing, Methodist Hymnody as an Expression of Methodist Beliefs and Thought and Practice. Go look it up online if you're really interested in the history of some of these rules and some of the context. It's a fairly short article, only about 14 pages. But one of the things that they dig into is that at the time of Methodism's founding, one, it was a really radical religion, a radical faith. and it was founded in this connectional conference idea or connectional idea. And so to keep congregations unified, you had to set some basic norms for it to be that connectional idea. And those norms can start with the hymns. But that hymnal was a lot shorter than our modern hymnal. And so it's interesting how as we've moved towards our more modern hymnal, we've gotten away from some of the actual purpose of these rules. I think that we haven't cut as many hymns as we've added.
So when these rules were written, there weren't as many hymns to learn.
Yes, exactly.
It wouldn't be the same as today, having to learn all the hymns, because there are a big number of them. So it's not exactly the same as it was when these were written.
Exactly, yeah.
All right, number 2. Sing them exactly as they are printed here, without altering or mending them at all. And if you've learned to sing them otherwise, unlearn it as soon as you can. Now, I will start with this one. This one, I don't fully agree with, because how I love the song, a lot of times it's usually melody first. If I love the melody, then I will really enjoy the song and get into the lyrics of the song. And there are a lot of songs or hymns that I don't like, but when they're sung to a different tune, I do like them. I get a lot of flack because one of my least favorite hymns is Amazing Grace.
Oh,
which I know, which is one of those hymns that's always on people's top 5, top 2 list. And it's 100% because of the melody. It kind of goes slow, and it's never been my favorite.
Well, you'll be happy to know that Amazing Grace was not in the hymnal at the time of the publication of the rules. That hymn had yet to be written, so you're in the clear.
Well, there you go. Well, I'm talking about it from a modern perspective, though. But when I've sung it to the tune of "Gift of Love" and to different other melodies and tunes, and I've enjoyed it. So with that one, I enjoy hymns sung to different hymn melodies than they might be written sometimes.
And again, kind of referencing that history, in that 1761 select hymns with tune annexed, several of the hymns were actually set to the same melody because it was familiar, because it was accessible. I particularly don't love this rule either, but for very different reasons, which is that the implication then is that you sing every verse of the hymn. If you're singing it exactly as it's printed, that means every single verse, and a lot of churches hold to that. And I can see that from a theological, from a spiritual understanding, that you need all of the lyrics to really get the whole message of the hymn. But at the same time, it is sometimes very painful to get through 6 verses of one hymn, and when it's a slower rhythmed piece, it's just like pulling teeth. Like, please, do we have to sing all 6 of these?
So we both don't necessarily agree with this one for completely different reasons, because I believe that every verse should be sung of a hymn because it tells a story. Whenever the composer writes a verse, they don't just throw one down. It has a lot of meaning to it.
Well, they should write shorter stories.
There should be a short story.
Short story, please.
But I believe
the abbreviated hymnal. That's what I need.
I believe that every verse should be sung. If you take verses out, it's usually only the first and the last verse that's sung, with one in the middle, and that doesn't tell you the full story of what the song is trying to convey.
You know, though, like the Cliff's Notes versions, that could be fine. That can help. Although I do think, again, rooted in that historical context, it does make a lot of sense to expect everybody to sing every verse exactly as it's printed, because again, it brings that connectional element, right? Methodists who are in a different part of England, who are studying in a different place or worshiping in a different place, they're going to have that common experience. And that's so key to the connectional element of Methodism even today. It makes sense. I still hate it.
Another reason that I don't necessarily agree with that one is because I don't like using male pronouns for God. So when I mean, as the hymnal is rewritten, a lot of the hymns are being rewritten with God. I believe on Eagle's Wings, it used to say, and he will raise you up. And I believe in the hymnal it now says, and God will raise you up. I should have checked that before I came up here, but that's what I believe it's been changed to that. So if it's still using male pronouns, I don't like to do that as well.
And again, Methodism was really radical when it was founded. In 1761, some of these hymns were very radical in that they were a movement away from some of the 17th century songs that were more inaccessible in church. It set things to a more modern tune, which was pretty scandalous. So at the time, these hymns were really modern, but we haven't always adapted it to keep pace.
So are you trying to say that what was modern in 1761 is not necessarily modern in 2019?
I mean, maybe. I might be getting at that point a little bit. And so I think singing them exactly as they are printed, when they were modern, when they were relevant, when they used language of the time that really spoke to people, it had a different impact than if we're singing the exact same hymn today. And so if we're looking at the impact of the hymn, we maybe need to reinterpret the rules.
Number 3, sing all. See that you join with the congregation as frequently as you can. Let not a slight degree of weakness or weariness hinder you. It is a cross to you. Take it up, and you will find it a blessing. Caitlin?
Wrong. It is a cross to me. I do not find it a blessing.
Do you like to lip sync as the hymns are being sung?
I mean, I'm a pretty pro lip syncer. But most times I just kind of try and hide behind the hymnal and not lip sync or do anything. Some of the hymns I'll sing, and we can kind of touch on it when we get to some of the later rules. Some of our hymns are not an equal level playing field when it comes to singing them. Like some of them are really hard if you are not a trained singer, and making people sing something that is outside of their skill set or outside of their range doesn't seem very Jesus-y to me.
That makes perfect sense. I don't necessarily agree. Whenever I sing, I try to sing it all. I mean, sometimes you might have to cough, or you might not be able to sing it all. Or a lot of times, I don't like to sing if I have lost my voice for whatever reason, if I'm sick, and so that's a weakness or weariness. Apparently, I let it hinder me when I am singing, but I try to sing all whenever I can. But I also usually. It's interesting because I'm usually you can kind of hear me amongst other people because I rarely sing the melody. I always sing the tenor part. So, but I try to sing all of it when I can. Number 4 and 5.
Wait.
Oh, do you want to keep going?
I still have some things
on
number
history?
3. I have some history.
This is history with Caitlin Dryke. Go.
Okay, so again, referencing this excellent article by Martin V. Clark, one of the things that he talks about is that this point emphasizes Wesley's theological position and attitudes towards musical participation. So Methodism is big into communal worship, that every single person has a role in that spiritual experience, as opposed to some other church structures that are a lot more hierarchical, and that somebody is more important to that religious experience. That's not the Methodist theology. It's that everybody is important. That whole community is an important part of worship. And so this rule highlights the importance of individual participation and commitment. So it's really theologically relevant to the whole Wesleyan theology and the whole Methodist theology. That doesn't mean that I love it, but I understand why it's there. So this idea that everyone from the church should be singing is grounded in everybody has an equal spot at the table for worship. I think that we violate this a lot through our use of soloists within Boston Avenue, and I think that that relates to some of the upcoming rules as well, in terms of what our mindset is around it. I think our soloists are not like going in with a bad mindset or anything, but I think it's something that our musical program, and I think many musical programs do, that doesn't uphold with these rules.
Okay. For me, talking about soloists is getting into number 7. Whenever we get to that, I want to go deeper into that because I kind of agree, but I don't fully. So we will get into that when we get to rule number 7.
We'll get there when we get there.
When we get there. Number 4 and 5, I feel like I want to use them together because to me they kind of contradict each other to a point. And I don't know if they do to you as well. Number 4, would you like to read? You read number 4, now I'll read number 5.
Oh, you gave me the one that I can't read without laughing. Okay. Sing lustily and with a good courage. Beware of singing as if you were half dead or half asleep, but lift up your voice with strength. Be no more afraid of your voice now, nor more ashamed of its being heard, than when you sung the songs of Satan. I feel personally attacked.
All right. Number 5, sing modestly, do not bawl, so as to be heard above or distinct from the rest of the congregation, that you may not destroy the harmony, but strive to unite your voices together, so as to make one clear, melodious sound.
Do you sing modestly?
I try to, however... Alicia is shaking her head over there. I try to. However, I'm often distinct because I don't sing the melody. But I don't do it to I don't do it to perform. I do it just because that's comfortable to me to sing the tenor part.
But does it destroy the harmony?
It doesn't. It actually adds to the harmony. So
No.
there is that because you can't have harmony if everybody's in unison.
So one of the things that I think these rules kind of capture again is that communal aspect of worship, that no one is more important than the other, and that individual participation and commitment is important. I think these rules are undermined when you have songs that cannot be sung by everyone, where there's a huge range in the notes or weird tempos or rests in the middle of things and multisyllabic pieces. And so these rules are nice if the hymn is something that everyone can sing with good courage and can sing modestly. And I think that we shoot ourselves in the foot sometimes with some of our hymns that are not accessible to everybody.
I feel with the good courage and modestly, there's a fine line to walk because to me, it's easy to have good courage and it turn into not being modest about it. And then singing modestly, it's easy to be kind of not having your voice with strength because you're trying to be more modest. If you have a naturally loud voice, you might be doing it with your voice not at strength because you're attempting to be modest. Whenever I was in elementary school, there was a choir member that you could always hear her voice above the whole choir, above the congregation when we all sang. So whenever I think about sing modestly, I have no idea who that was because I was, 4th grade, 5th grade.
But it's stuck with you.
But it's stuck with me. And whenever you could hear the choir sing or the whole congregation sing, when I think of singing modestly, I think of her because it was not modest because you could hear it above everybody else. So those are the 4th and 5th rules. Do you have anything else to add about either one of those or both?
I would just say that those were while they seem kind of contradictory or difficult, that razor's edge to walk, ultimately the undermining point of both of them is that singing can be an important part of your worship experience as long as it's about expressing praise, belief, prayer to God in a communal setting. And so both of those are to kind of keep that balance of we're doing this all together as a community and we're grounding it in our spiritual growth and our faith rather than our egos or our fears or our anxieties or our concerns about other people's judgments or our attempts to secure praise. And so both of them, they're on opposite sides of the spectrum, but they're both trying to meet in the middle at that point.
And that also goes with our number 7 when we get to it. Number 6, which I 100% agree with and I'm on board with, is sing in time. Whatever time is sung, be sure to keep with it. Do not run before nor stay behind it, but attend close to the leading voices and move therewith as exactly as you can, and take care not to sing too slow. This drawling way naturally steals on all who are lazy, and it is high time to drive it out from us and sing all our tunes just as quick as we did at first. With this rule, I think about the first three words, which is sing and time. And it's not necessarily even keeping up with the lead voice of someone's or the organist. I feel like and it's getting technical now, I feel like every hymn needs a time signature with like a quarter note equals this many beats, because a lot of times I've sung songs that should go faster and whoever's leading it goes way slower than you need, which then whenever it's the rule about singing all of it, then it becomes a chore to do because you're going a lot slower than you should. So with that one, I think sing in time includes the person who is leading as well, but but also sing with the person who's leading. Don't go behind them, don't go above them, and so forth.
And just a historical note borrowed from that same article that I've referenced a few times now. So during the late 17th century, English parishes were having a hard time with their musical experiences. A lot of congregations had been left without musical direction, and they were singing these old psalm tunes that had become slower and slower, and they had lost any sort of distinctive rhythm. So this was kind of a call out. That in the 18th century, there were a lot of attempts to eradicate this very slow, undistinguishable style of singing that had been used in churches for such a long time prior to that. So again, this is kind of rooted in that historical moment while still being relevant today. I think it would help if we wrote hymns in an accessible way anyway. Some of them, it seems like, were designed to be put to a slow tempo, and then it is like a funeral procession, and then we sing all 5 verses because we're supposed to, and then it is gruesome, at least in my opinion.
If we did every song and we're twice as fast, would you be okay? Would you be more okay with singing every verse?
I would like us to pull a Hamilton and start rapping our hymns, actually, at a much quicker pace. I feel like we would achieve a lot more spiritually.
Okay, I
as a
don't think that's going to happen, but I appreciate you letting us know of your opinion.
Yeah, that was a joke. That's not happening.
All right. Number 7 is, I would say, probably the most important of the rules or of the guidelines and directions. Above all, sing spiritually. Have an eye to God in every word you sing. Aim at pleasing God more than yourself or any other creature. In order to do this, attend strictly to the sense of what you sing, and see that your heart is not carried away with the sound, but offered to God continually. So shall your singing be such as the Lord will approve here, and reward you when God cometh in the clouds of heaven. This one kind of goes with my thought about soloists, or just, I guess, the choir singing in general. I don't have a problem with soloists in church. I've sung solos before. I've heard wonderful soloists. To me, a lot of it depends upon if you feel that the soloist is truly doing it spiritually or as a performance, which the same thing goes with choirs. A lot of people do not like silence. They're afraid of any silence, and they want talking throughout, and silence scares some people, which is why a lot of times if there's a silent prayer, it's usually 2 minutes max, maybe 1 minute, but it feels like 5-10 minutes because you're not used to silence. And the same goes with whenever a choir or a soloist is done. Whenever someone performs and they're finished, the first thing that people think to do is applaud. And I love it whenever I go to a church and the choir finishes and there's just silence. They just let you kind of take in what they said, and it's more of a spiritual moment than when applause occurs. So that's what I think about with choirs and soloists. Do you have anything to add?
I mean, when I sing along with Beyonce, it's spiritual, so I'm following this rule at least.
Beyonce was brought into this podcast twice now. Let's see how many more times we can bring her in.
Well, if we could actually bring her in, I would fangirl really hard. But no, I think that this rule is perhaps the most important in terms of the lens and the insight it provides into John Wesley's thoughts and his theology and what he really felt the role of music in church was. And I think that it's a really strong rule to have at the forefront of everything. I do wonder how he would respond to things like the contemporary music that appears on the radio and in contemporary worship situations. And I know, we have our 13th Street worship, and it's very much rooted in everybody is singing communally. The lyrics are on the slides, but how different that experience is from 250 years ago when this was written.
So these have been the 7 guidelines, 7 directions for singing. Like I said before, check it out in the United Methodist hymnal. I actually don't have a hymnal at my house, so if you do not have a hymnal at your house, it is okay. When you come to church, check it out at Roman numeral 7, right at the very beginning before it gets to the hymns and everything. So it's right at the beginning.
You can also find them on the United Methodist Church website.
Oh yeah, you can use the technology and go to the website as well, or just Google 7 rules for singing. You'll find lots of articles about them. Do you have anything else to add about the 7 guidelines?
I think we are good. Just remind you all, learn these tunes before you learn any others. Sing them exactly as they are printed. Sing all. Sing lustily and with a good courage. Sing modestly. Sing in time. And above all, sing spiritually.
Excellent. Thank you. This has been the Ascends at Boston Avenue podcast. We are located at 1301 South Boston Avenue in downtown Tulsa, Oklahoma. If you want to see what's happening at Boston Avenue, you can check our Facebook page. And we hope to see you here sometime. Thank you.